Something absolutely wild happened on the court recently, and it might be one of the biggest wake-up calls in women's basketball history. The star at the center of this uproar is Angel Reese, a player who's been called everything from a potential game changer to a walking controversy. Keep watching, because we're diving deep into how Angel Reese went from one of the most hyped names in recent basketball memory to a cautionary tale of how hype and reality can collide in spectacular fashion. Before we get to the meltdown that shook the basketball world, let's rewind to Angel Reese's meteoric rise at LSU. From the moment she stepped into the college basketball scene, it was obvious she had star power. She racked up stats in eye-catching ways, grabbing rebounds and scoring with an uncanny finesse, at least against certain college-level opponents. Fans dubbed her Bayou Barbie, an image that spread like wildfire online. Social media went crazy for her confidence and style, fueling the narrative that she was set to be the next face of women's hoops. But it wasn't just her on-court skills that had people buzzing. Angel Reese quickly leveraged social media to expand her presence beyond basketball. She showed up in glamorous photo shoots, teased behind-the-scenes glimpses of her life, and positioned herself as an influencer just as much as an athlete. That strategy worked. She scored endorsements, built a dedicated following, and had mainstream outlets touting her as a once-in-a-generation type of star. Yet, even at this early stage, some skeptics questioned whether the hype was outrunning her actual development. Coaches and analysts mentioned she had an edge that could either become her greatest strength or her biggest liability. People could see flashes of greatness, but they also noticed how often she leaned into theatrics, trash talk, flexing, celebratory dances, sometimes at the expense of perfecting the fundamentals. If the goal was to become a legend, it wasn't just about ball handling skills or free throw percentages, it was about discipline and accountability. Those missing pieces would become painfully obvious soon enough. It's one thing to dominate in college, but the professional arena, whether the WNBA or high-level pro circuits, demands a completely different caliber of focus. When Angel Reese finally made that leap, the press went into overdrive, heralding her arrival like she was set to transform the league overnight. Broadcasters hyped up her swagger, calling her an instant ratings boost. In her first appearances, fans waited to see if she'd live up to her bold persona. And at first, she did show flashes of potential, snagging rebounds, grinding it out in the paint, and pulling off confident mid-range jumpers. But as the competition ramped up, cracks began to show. Where was the evolution in her fundamentals? Why did the flash sometimes overshadow the actual game plan? A lot of supporters shrugged off these early warning signs, insisting that she just needs time to adjust, or she's still young. The best is yet to come. However, her critics grew louder, pointing out every ill-advised shot or moment of poor decision-making as evidence that Angel Reese was more talk than talent. On social media, the debates intensified. One camp praised her for bringing attention to women's basketball. The other questioned if she was overshadowing more skilled but quieter players who truly understood what it took to excel professionally. And then came the night that changed everything, an absolutely jaw-dropping meltdown of epic proportions. Angel Reese stepped onto the court, exuding the usual bravado. But from the opening tip-off, it was clear something was off. Her passes looked forced, her shot selection questionable, and her decision-making seemed clouded by the need to prove she was the toughest player out there. Opponents quickly smelled blood in the water. Napheesa Collier, known for her disciplined, no-nonsense approach, locked in and began exposing Angel Reese's gaps. Reese started racking up turnovers like it was part of her game plan, once even bouncing the ball off the backboard in a bizarre attempt to pass to herself, leaving even her most die-hard fans cringing. By the time the fourth quarter rolled around, she had a staggering 7 turnovers. That number alone tells a story of a player trying to force heroics in a situation where calm, collected play was needed most. But the real kicker wasn't just the stats, it was the attitude. Amid missed layups and bungled defensive stances, Reese seemed determined to intimidate her opponents with physical contact, borderline reckless shoves, and endless chirping at the refs. Instead of showcasing skill, she leaned on bravado, trying to knock Napheesa Collier off her game psychologically. The result? Napheesa responded by draining clutch shots and calmly walking away each time Angel tried another intimidation tactic. It was a masterclass in how to shut down trash talk, let your game speak. Meanwhile, Angel Reese's meltdown spiraled from comedic missteps to flat-out embarrassing blunders. Moments after the final buzzer, fans and critics alike flooded the internet with reactions, memes, and hot takes. If you opened any social media platform, it was impossible to avoid commentary on Angel Reese's unraveling performance. Some folks roasted her for failing to back up her pre-game swagger, joking that she played like a YMCA hooper who just learned the rules. Others zeroed in on a more serious critique that her approach, more about flexing than fundamental basketball, was never built to last against elite competition. Comment threads exploded with comparisons to Caitlin Clark or other top-tier players who consistently deliver under pressure. The overarching sentiment was that, while Angel Reese might talk a big game, she wasn't evolving where it mattered. Fans posted clips of her bungled passes and missed layups, often set to comedic soundtracks to highlight how surreal the meltdown looked. Even supporters who normally defended her had a hard time explaining away this particular outing. Yet, as the internet does, it also fueled a secondary wave of chatter about accountability. Was it just a bad game, or did it expose deeper issues in Angel Reese's preparation and attitude? A few of her defenders claimed the refs were biased, or that she was being singled out because of her outspoken personality. But as the dust settled, it became clear that blaming officiating or external factors couldn't disguise the reality. Angel Reese had dropped the ball, in more ways than one. The story took another turn in the post-game interviews and online discussions, where Angel Reese doubled down on explanations that, for many, sounded more like deflections. She pointed at officiating, insisted that she was singled out, and alluded to underlying biases that made the game unfair. While nobody denies that officiating can be imperfect, her critics labeled these statements as yet another refusal to own up to mistakes. In a now infamous snippet on social media, Angel's mother tried to encourage her by dismissing critics outright. She essentially told her daughter to ignore everyone. Supporters applauded that message as motherly love, but detractors saw it as enabling Angel's lack of self-awareness. After all, how do you improve if you're constantly told to brush off criticism instead of learning from it? That's the crux of the situation. Accountability. In competitive sports, especially at the professional level, even the best players dissect their own weaknesses. They watch game footage, study their mistakes, and figure out how to avoid them next time. For Angel Reese, the meltdown game provided a mountain of footage she could use to fix her flaws if she's willing to do the unglamorous work of acknowledging them. But her post-game narrative raised doubts about whether she actually wants to confront those shortcomings or if she's content to keep the focus on external factors. There's another layer to this drama. Controversy can sometimes boost popularity, at least temporarily. We've all seen athletes who become household names because they're entertaining, loud, or prone to shocking statements. The question is whether that formula eventually self-destructs. For every star who rode controversy to legendary status, there are plenty who flamed out once the novelty wore off. Angel Reese finds herself at a crossroads where her brazen confidence could either propel her to iconic status or turn her into a viral punchline. After all, a meltdown might trend on social media. But if it becomes a pattern, fans lose interest. Even brand deals can sour if the audience feels the athlete isn't delivering real substance. Sure, controversy might generate clicks, but you can't build a Hall of Fame career on viral moments alone. Outside of her direct basketball audience, you have the general sports crowd, people who tune in sporadically but love a good underdog or a redemption arc. They might be enthralled by Angel Reese's story if she shifts the narrative in her favor. But if meltdown after meltdown keeps happening, she risks pushing casual fans away, leaving only the hardcore loyalists and critics to watch the spectacle. When the dust settles, real success is measured in wins, growth, and respect from peers, all things that can't be faked with showboating. So, where does Angel Reese go from here? For some stars, a public meltdown serves as a turning point, a shock to the system that forces them to adapt. They change their training, adjust their attitude, and come back stronger than ever. If that's the path Angel chooses, this ugly performance might become just a bump in the road, a cautionary tale she can look back on and say, "That's when I decided to evolve." However, there's another possibility. She doubles down on the showmanship, the social media drama, and the blame game. In that scenario, her game might stall out, and no amount of TikTok views or Instagram likes will conceal a lack of progress. Eventually, the league will move on to players who can deliver under pressure without relying on theatrics. The stakes are high, women's basketball has been growing rapidly in popularity, attracting new sponsors, bigger crowds, and more media attention. Fans are hungry for dynamic, skilled players who aren't just talk. If Angel Reese wants to maintain her spot in the limelight, she'll have to prove that she can be just as disciplined as she is entertaining. Because as of right now, many are left wondering if her meltdown is a sign that the hype was never truly sustainable. Angel Reese's story isn't over. Every meltdown presents a choice: keep repeating the same mistakes or evolve into something better. The recent fiasco shows she's at a crossroads, her brand at risk, her reputation shaky, and her own fans waiting to see if she'll step up or flame out. She can still become the transcendent player many believed she was destined to be. She's got the physical gifts and the attention of the basketball world, but it requires letting go of the blame game, shutting out the noise, and putting in the work to address the weaknesses that were laid bare under the bright lights. This level of humility could transform her from an online spectacle into a real contender. Ultimately, the meltdown game has become a litmus test for Angel Reese's future. Will she accept that the hype alone won't carry her forever? Can she learn from the masterclass provided by Napheesa Collier, Caitlin Clark, and other disciplined high-level competitors who do more than just talk? Or will she keep clinging to the theatrics that once made her famous, even as they risk making her irrelevant? The truth is, basketball never lies. It will always expose gaps in skill and highlight real champions. If Angel Reese is serious about proving herself, she has no choice but to pivot and prove that all the faith, publicity, and fanfare weren't misplaced. Until then, she's teetering on the edge of irrelevance, overshadowed by her own meltdown. Only time will tell if this is her downfall or the beginning of a redemption story that changes everything.